Welcome to episode 4 of Marriage Conversations, where we're talking about the myths and the realities of marriage. I've always believed that one way to reduce the divorce rate, because we know it's high, it's about 50%, that one way to reduce the divorce rate is to open up the door and show some of the myths and realities about marriage so that people go into marriage sober-minded. Because you hear a lot of people go into marriage and they just be getting disappointed. They go in with a certain set of expectations, and then when they get there, they're like, oh, hell no, this ain't nothing that I expected. Or they go in thinking, oh, I knew marriage would be hard, but I didn't know marriage would be this hard. You know, you see a lot of women walking away from marriages, and sometimes I say, you know what? The man really wasn't the problem. Your expectations was the problem. So some people need to figure out whether or not marriage is even the right vehicle, if it's even the right investment for them, because some of the things that people describe is not marriage. So why get married? You might as well go on and do something different. Have a boyfriend, have a live-in boyfriend. I don't know, something different than marriage, because otherwise you're going to get into marriage and you're going to be completely disappointed. And next thing you know, you're going to be at the divorce court filing for divorce, talking about irreconcilable differences. So in episode 1, we talked about, like, you know, giving people a chance to think about why they even want to get married. What do they want out of marriage? What do they think marriage would bring to them? Why do you want to go from the life you have now to a life of marriage? What is it you want out of marriage? And in episode 2, we covered some realities of marriage, because a lot of people have expectations of marriage. And I'm like, that ain't even marriage. So you might want to come up with something different. Some people have this idea of what marriage is and what they're going to get out of marriage and what they can do in a marriage. And I'd be like, that ain't it. That ain't it. That ain't it. You don't need to get married. And then episode 3, we covered the risk of marriage, talking about how risky marriage is. And marriage is a risk. So, you know, scary people don't need to get married. People who don't want to risk anything, their heart, their love, their money or time or anything, they don't need to get married, because marriage is for risk takers. It's not for people who want a sure shot, a guarantee, and none of that. And that's what we talked about in episode 3. And now here in episode 4, we're going to talk about that marriage involves trade-offs, and you don't get something for nothing. You find a lot of people who want to use marriage as a way to come up. And I'm saying, you know what? That ain't it. Marriage involves trade-offs. You may come up, but you also might have to let go of something. And that's the trade-off in marriage. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So what we're talking about today is that marriage involves trade-offs. You don't get to just take this wonderful life you're already living and then layer on a husband to it, and then take your happiness from a level 8 to a level 10. And you just layer on top of the happiness you already have. Marriage involves trade-offs. Marriage actually replaces parts of your existing life as a single person. It replaces it with other things, and that's called marriage. So you don't just get to keep both your single life and then layer on marriage and keep both at the same time. There's parts about your life that you will have to trade this for that. And I use the word trade-off. I know a lot of people out here like to use the word settling. They don't want to settle, but settling implies or connotes that, you know what, you're losing something, that something is taken away from you, that you're a loser. That's what settling kind of implies. But trade-off says, no, you're not losing. You're voluntarily letting go of something in order to trade it for something else. So yeah, is there a part of something that you were doing that you might have to let go? Absolutely. But you're trading it for something bigger, something better that maybe you value more. That's what marriage is. It's a trade. It's not settling, because you're still winning, but you're winning in different areas of your life. You're willing to trade this area for another area. Most people have figured out that, you know what, marriage, you don't use marriage to make you happy. Most people have figured out that you need to be happy by yourself, with yourself, before you even get married. You can't go into marriage expecting some man to make you happy. And also the same with your partner. You can't go in and expect to make someone else happy when you're not happy with yourself. Most people have figured out enough about marriage to know that you absolutely need to be happy with yourself before you go into marriage. People spend a lot of time making themselves happy. They create a life for themselves. I call it like your recipe of happiness, your happiness cake. And all the ingredients you put in your happiness cake to make you happy, whether it's your family, your friends, your career, your job, pets, your hobbies, what you like to do for fun, what gives you enjoyment, what gives you fulfillment, all those little various ingredients and traits, you kind of dumped into a bowl, mixed them all together, and you created this sort of happiness cake. And that's where you are prior to you getting married. You're happy. You're happy with your life. You're happy without being married, you're happy. And then you say, yeah, I'm happy, but I think there's some areas that I want to go to another level. I want to experience another level of happiness. And you say, okay, well, I've created all these things in my life that make me happy. But you know what will make me even maybe more happier is being able to do that with someone else. Like, yeah, I like my friends and family and I love spending time with them, but I would love to have my special someone, a mate, to spend Thanksgiving with, Christmas with, Valentine's Day with, my birthday with. Yeah, I can just do it with my friends and family, but I also want my special someone. You may say, yeah, I love to travel and I don't mind traveling by myself with my friends or my family, but it would be nice to be able to go on some of these trips with my special someone, a mate to travel with. You know what? You might already have kids or you may want kids and you may say, yeah, you know what? I could have kids by myself or I already have kids by myself, but it sure would be nice to raise these kids or these potential kids with someone else. You might have a career that you love and you might be, doing your thing out there, building a business, climbing the corporate ladder. You have a career trajectory that you're on and you may say, yeah, all this is good and fun and everything, but I would love to build this wealth, this generational wealth, or build this life with someone else other than myself. And that's what makes people start to think about, well, is marriage for me? And then oftentimes people start thinking about, well, what's their ideal mate? What's their ideal man? And they come up with a whole list of things. They say, okay, well, I already have my happiness cake. What type of icing do I want on my cake? You know what? Do I want chocolate frosting? Do I want a sour cream frosting? Do I want, all these different frostings you can put on a cake? And that becomes the women sort of conjure up in their head. And they say, you know what? I'm going to take my happiness cake that I've already baked and I'm going to layer on this man on top of the cake. And then I'm going to have a whole happy cake with icing on the top. But what a lot of people don't figure out, they don't figure out what they're going to have to trade to get that. You have this happiness cake that you've already built and you have this guy that you want. But a lot of people don't think that guy costs anything. No, sometimes you got to trade some of the ingredients you already had in your happiness cake in order to do this over here, this marriage thing. And that's what trips up a lot of people. They don't realize that. Marriage involves a trade-off. You don't just to get to add the two together. Oftentimes you have to let go of something in order to get something over here. Right now, you could be stuck on looks and height. Maybe your dating life is good and you like it and you happy with it. You know what? But maybe you have to give up some of the criteria in your looks and the height in order to get all those other things you want in a guy. Is that worth it for you? Are you willing to trade not having the Michael B. Jordans or the 6'2" guy in order to get the guy who's going to be the good father and, will want to travel with you and want to spend time with you? Because in the end, you know what? If you want to travel all around the world, I don't know what height has to do with that. And I don't even know what looks have to do with that. Those are the type of trade-offs you have to think about. What are the trade-offs you're willing to make and which trade-offs aren't you willing to make? But if you're a person that says, I don't have any trade-offs I want to make, then more than likely you ain't gonna never get married. And sometimes women's wish list, things they want in a guy, it actually contradicts the happiness cake they've already built. Sometimes in the happiness cake that they build, maybe something like travel, but then they pick a guy who's not even available to travel. It actually contradicts each other. This happened in my own life. I'm an avid traveler, traveled all around the world, traveled all the time. And I used to date this guy who was like this high-powered attorney. And guess what? He had a lot of money that if he wanted to travel, he could. But here was the problem. He never had any time to travel. He was so important on his job. He was such an important person that guess what? He didn't have a lot of time to travel. And he worked in a traditional corporate structure. He wasn't some entrepreneur that could pick and choose when he traveled. No, he worked for an organization. And as such, his vacation time, the time he had to actually travel was limited. He was such an important person, he couldn't travel all the time. So I would have had to given up something in my happiness cake, which was travel, in order to be with a man that although he had a great salary and a prestigious career, I would have lost. I would have had to trade my travel. And I didn't want to do that. So my trade-off was I kept the travel part of my happiness case. And I decided I want to marry a man who had more flexibility to travel, more free time. And that also meant that I had to go down possibly in salary because listen, when you make a lot of money and you're doing a lot of things, you're important. Those type of people are important to other people and organizations. And they don't get to just travel around and not be accountable and actually not be available for other people. So that was sort of a trade-off I made. I wanted to keep my travel aspect of my life. And I wasn't willing to give that up for other things. Some women that already have kids, you know what? You may want a father to your existing kids. You want to make a father for next kids. But what are you willing to give up for a good father for your children? Are you willing to give up height? Are you willing to give up age? Are you willing to give up looks? Are you willing to give up a big salary when the most important thing might just be a man helping you to raise these kids? What are you willing to trade off? Trade-offs are not a loss. Trade-offs are that you are trading something that you already have and you're trading it for something that you want. That's a trade. Just like you were back in school and you was trading cards with friends, or you were trading dolls, or whatever you traded. That is you didn't come away feeling as if you lost something. You felt, oh, I'm trading something I already have. And although I valued it, I'm also going to trade it for something that I value equally or more. And that's what marriage is about. So if you're a person who doesn't feel like you need to trade anything in order to get to marriage, then more than likely you need to stay single.